Welcome to the Digital Learning Now showcase. We've got three really exciting programs to share with you. We're going to start with a school district, a Mooresville graded school district. It's just north of Charlotte, North Carolina, probably the best example in the country of one-to-one computing. And then we'll move to a school model, and we're featuring KIPP Empower. And then we're going to move to math and look at one of the coolest personalized learning programs in mathematics called Next Classroom. So I want to start with our friends from the Mooresville Graded School District. Come on up here. I had the chance this summer to go to their annual conference. And in case they don't talk enough about it, we are going to focus on the technology today, but this is a district that has very high expectations for kids and teachers, and a really, really powerful culture, a collaborative culture. We have the middle school principal, Kerr Tolbert, and she is joined by Simone Graham, a biology teacher, and two students. Do you guys want to come up now or later?
We're going to switch off a little bit.
Okay, we'll let you kick it off, Carrie.
All right, thank you very much. It's our honor to be here with you today from Mooresville Graded School District. We're going to take turns and just share different stories and perspectives about our experience with our digital conversion. So we'll talk a little bit about what all that entails. Just so you know a little bit of background on each of us, my name is Kerr Tolbert, and I'm the principal at Mooresville Middle School. I'm in my 4th year as being principal there. We are in our 5th year of the digital conversion, so I was there as an assistant principal 2 years before that. So I've had the pleasure of being a part of the entire journey with our digital conversion. Before that, I served as a teacher and a central office administrator in a different school district, but ironically, I'm also a graduate of Mooresville High School, which is just kind of a funny twist to the story, but I'm honored to be back in the community that so served me well, so it's just fun to be a different role. A little bit about Mooresville. Tom has already talked just a little bit about us, but just so you have some perspective, we are 30 miles north of Charlotte, North Carolina, which most people have heard due to the Carolina Panthers. And we have about 5,800 students in our school district. Comparatively in North Carolina, we are a smaller school district, but nationally, we are not a smaller school district. We are actually the size of 70% of the school district nationally, or actually a little bit smaller. In regards to our makeup for our school district, we are 73% white and 27% minority students, and 40% of our students are on the free and reduced lunch program. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better perspective of where we stand. Why a digital conversion? Our superintendent, Dr. Mark Edwards, kind of coined this phrase when he developed this project for our school district, and our Board of Education kind of charged him with more adequately preparing our students to be 21st century learners. So why do we choose to do this? There's a lot of reasons, obviously, but we really wanted to ensure that our students' experience in school matched their experience in the real world. And that was our mission, to ensure that every child, every day, actually had an experience that matched what we were preparing them for. Whereas many of you know, traditionally that doesn't happen in many of our schools. Kind of locks down the door to the real world and puts them in a traditional classroom. So we were destined to ensure that that didn't happen with our students. And we wanted to ensure that relevant instruction also occurred with all of that. We wanted to close that digital divide for our students and ensure that they were ready for the 21st century. Our instructional practice changed drastically, and Ms. Graham will talk a little bit about that from the teacher perspective. And our goal was not just to have fun and games and higher engagement, but to really strategically improve academic achievement. And most importantly, at least to me, why we decided to embark on a digital conversion is it's a moral imperative. It is honestly just the right thing to do for our kids. I come to my school every day knowing that the environment we provide is the right environment for our students. And we could be doing even more things even better. We're definitely not perfect in it, but I know that we are preparing them for the 21st century, and I'm confident in that when I walk into every classroom. I morally know we're doing the right thing for them, and that's what's driven what we do every single day. So a little bit of logistics about this. Again, we've coined it our digital conversion. There are a lot of names that you could use for it, but we also want to be very clear that this is not a technology project. It is an instructional paradigm shift. If it were a technology project, it would be the separate entity that is fun, and kids go online to play games, and they might do a little bit of interactive collaboration or something, that's not a kind of into the fabric of everything that we do. And it is in the fabric of everything that we do. It's been a complete cultural shift in Mooresville Graded School District. Literally, when we gave out the laptops to teachers first, every teacher in Mooresville became a first-year teacher again, because they weren't sure how to teach when every child had a laptop instead of a textbook or a notebook. They were kind of thrown out of their comfort zone a little bit. So we had to do a lot of professional development in order to change that culture and ensure that we were very consistent in our message about why we were doing this. But some of the logistics that were involved was that this did involve 500 teacher laptops, 4,000 MacBooks for all 4th through 12th graders, 400 MacBooks that are on carts for every 3rd grade student, so we're starting to expose them a little bit earlier. 120 interactive whiteboards in every classroom, grades K through 3. My son is a kindergartner, and he gets to interact with his smartboard every day, which he loves to tell me about. It's rather funny. And there is online content available virtually 24/7 for our students, and we do have ubiquitous wireless throughout every school in our school district. So those are the logistics and the nuts and bolts of what our digital conversion is. So the ingredients to our digital conversion, as I mentioned before, we really had to purposefully build our culture and explain to our community, to our parents, to our teachers, and to our students why we chose to do this. Because when you're sinking in the amount of resources and money and funding, you have to ensure that everyone is on board with you. So we took a lot of time before we actually put laptops in the hands of every child to explain what we were doing and why. And again, that moral imperative came back into it. That's always what we came back to, is that every child, every day in Mooresville Graded School District will have that equilibrium of resources. Doesn't matter whether you're in an AP class or you're in a resource exceptional children's class, and every state calls it something different. But we wanted to ensure that every child had the same resources so that they could learn even better. So that goes back to the 21st century, the tools. We also wanted to ensure that everything we do is data-driven. The technology makes that much more efficient and easier, yes, but we don't want to, again, just make these haphazard decisions about instruction. We're very focused and specific in those decisions that we make. It's also about building more leadership. We have never brought anybody from the outside to our school district to train our teachers, to help our students, to train our administrators. We've been very purposeful, a lot of it has been for funding actually, but very purposeful in developing leaders within our school district to enhance what other teachers are doing as well as administrators. And as Tom mentioned before, he had the pleasure of coming to Mooresville to participate in our Summer Connection, which is when we actually provide a conference for others embarking on a one-to-one experience. And we wish we had had that opportunity, but we didn't. So we want to share and be able to serve others in that same capacity of trying to help continuously build that leadership, because we do feel that leadership has been a great key. Leadership in the classroom with our students, and better leadership with our teachers and our current administrators that we have. So what does all this mean? Again, I'd say this is really cool and fun, and kids love the laptops, and they get excited about iTunes and things that they have better access to. But what does it all really mean for our students? In the last 5 years, our graduation rate has soared. We are now number 3 in the state of North Carolina with our graduation rate, which we're very proud of. Also, in regards to our AMO targets, we've met all 57 of our targets, and again, number 2 in the state in order to be able to do that. Our district achievement in the last 5 years has drastically grown, which again, we're very proud of. From 73% proficient in 2007, 2008, and now at 89% most recently. So we know that it's not just fun and games. This is actually impacting the learning of every child in our school district. Also in our state, out of 115 school districts in the state of North Carolina, we have ranked or tied number 2 in our student achievement. So we're still shooting for that number 1. 90% is still our goal, but we are ranked at number 2, which again, traditionally in Mooresville, we've been kind of average, pretty complacent before we actually embarked on this initiative, which is really important to note that out of 115 school districts, we actually rank 100 in how much we spend per child. So we're not putting all this extra money into our kids. If we had it, we would. But we don't have it, which is where most school districts are nationally right now. It's not like you have tons of extra money just hiding away to spend on laptops. We've been very creative on the money that we have and how we've used it. And we still rank 100 out of 115 in how we spend our money on kids. But yet we're tied for number 2 in the state in regards to student achievement and student performance. So how much does this all cost? per child, it's about the price of a soda, $1.25. And it actually includes the machine and software on the machine. We have mentioned that our kids all do have MacBook Airs now. We've changed our laptops a couple times due to our lease, but this is a lease. And this is not just a one-time thing. It was not achieved through a grant or a random surplus of money that was given to our school district. It was used at first through textbook money, and then we were able to keep this as a consistent item of our budget to ensure that we're always focusing on an instructional initiative, not just a technology outsider project. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it to the most interesting stories that we have. As Tom mentioned before, we do have a student and two teachers with us, or excuse me, one teacher and two students with us today. Our students are a senior and an 8th grader in Mooresville Graded School District, and then our teacher is Ms. Simone Graham, who is a biology teacher at Mooresville High School. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm a biology teacher at Mooresville Graded School District. I'm very honored to be a member of the school district there. I'm also a graduate, as Kerr is also, so they can tell you a lot about the school district. I'm here today to give you a perspective of the teacher in the classroom. I know that a lot of people talk about one-to-one classroom. You're like, okay, well, how do a teacher use that in the classroom? Some people have this perspective that it's an easy job and it makes the teachers lazier. However, it's really not. You become more busy in making sure that the kids are on task at all times. So I'm in here to tell you that. I graduated from Winston-Salem State University, and I can say when I graduated from school, they trained me to go into a traditional classroom. And let me tell you about a traditional classroom. When we talk about a traditional classroom, I'm talking about me standing in front of the whiteboard, writing down all the notes, and kids writing on the piece of paper, taking notes. That's what we're all used to, right? Well, in this traditional classroom, when we talk about this, it's nothing traditional about facilitating a one-to-one. In facilitating one-to-one, I can show you a project that my kids are doing in class. I center my projects around student-centered projects where the kids actually go in and they build projects through this technology piece. You want to drive curriculum, but in the curriculum, you want to make it enjoyable and fun for kids to learn. When you put the laptops in front of the student, if I say, get research brainstems, they're actually going in and they're researching the topic there. As you can see in this digital portfolio, and every student in our school has a digital portfolio, you can see where my student went in and we actually do the labs in class. So they're doing the physical part in class. And what happens is I make them go home and they have to put together a digital portfolio, a presentation. In this presentation, you can see where she's listed her experimenters, the people in the class. She's now giving an abstract of what's going to happen in this lab. This lab is on a farm at Cletus where they're testing fertilizers. She gives an introduction, and then she's going through and she's listing the materials that she needed in class. All of this was done outside of my classroom because in class, we're actually doing the hands-on model. But outside of class, instead of spending a lot of class time on this, I have her go home and research. Before it's published, it has went through 5 points. I have to edit it, and she has 4 other peers that edit her presentation. We do not edit in class. It's all through a blog online, and we can go in and we can say, you need to change this, or you need to go back and fix that. Here's her data where she's getting it in class, formulating the data. Now, the interesting thing about this is now I collaborate with the math teachers because now they're going to take this data that they're getting and they're going to build graphs and charts from this data. So I've collaborated with the math teachers in using technology that they're going to have to use in college as well as in high school, but now they're better prepared when they leave. So now she's formulated all the data, and as you can see underneath the data, her and her group has actually explained each piece of that data so I can better get an understanding of it. As we go through, you have what we call a discussion. In this is a very important piece because what I do is I put up a blog online. And the groups, they go in and they blog on the research that they have done and the actual information they have gathered from the research. Each group goes in and blog and they actually compare, make a comparison. And in this, she's comparing her group to another group. And all of this is kids collaborating outside of my class, and they're putting it on a digital portfolio for every teacher to see, for me to go in and grade. And then at the end of their 12th grade year, they can download everything that they've ever put on this digital portfolio from each class and take it with them to college. So it's very visual. In the this right here, I communicate with the actual, collaborate with the English teachers in proofreading and editing the piece. I'm now going to take you into another page. It's called a cell page. And in here, they did a project on the cell structures. The standard course of study wants the students to know each cell component, each cell organelle, and their functions. As we go through, she's actually listed the cell component, which is the cell wall. She's gave the function of the cell wall, and then she gives the image of that cell wall. The piece that's lighting up in red, that is how she cites her sources. Digital citizenship is very important when you have a one-to-one because you don't want kids to forgerize any information. If I was to click on that source right now, it would take me to that page so I could make sure she didn't forge any of that information. She goes through and she lists all her pieces of the organelles, and she gives the function and the structure. This is great for the EOC because all these organelles are normally listed on the EOC and you have to know the function. As you go down through this piece, this here, I make them do something called an iMovie. An iMovie is a component that you have on your computer. And in this iMovie, she is going to go through and she's going to record herself and the actual 3D model that she had to build. I always have my kids do it hands-on information as well. So she's put together this movie on her own. And she's actually explaining the components of this cell. She's going in and zooming in, and that's a component as well in that structure. And she's explaining each organelle. So one, she had to use technology to enhance her knowledge of the information. She went in and she's using grammar because she's putting in the information on the functions, and she's making a video that she can keep forever there. How many times as a teacher a kid does a project and you put it up for 1 month and then it's time to move on to the next, and what do you do with the rest of them? You throw them in the trash, right? And you keep the best ones. Here, I can keep this forever because now it's on her digital portfolio. And anytime I want to show a kid what she did, I go in and type her name and pull this up, and I can show any of my kids at any time. This student I had last semester, so I didn't even have her this semester. This is a student that I had last semester in that digital portfolio. As we go down, the next component of this project is something called a comic life. And a comic life, as you can see here, is a component on our laptops that the kids use. It's something like you would do when you make a hands-on poster, but this here, I'm making it more digital. Kids love it because now they get to take things in their house, and she's taking pictures of stuffed animals around her house, and she's making this into a comic life. What we do in class with this component, I say, well, give me a story that you want to make a conflict with these organelles, and by the end of the story, you have to resolve the conflict. You have to use everyday items at your house. So what she's going to do at home, she's going to go home and take pictures of everyday items with her laptop, and when she brings it back to school, her and her group plugs these everyday items in, and then they start to build a story around these everyday items. This is fitting in with the standard course of study because, of course, they have to know the organelles in order to make the story collaborate with the structure. Now, the next story I'm going to tell you is about a student, and he's going to make a video about his cell organelles.
Prokaryotes in there, and plant cells also. Cell walls are outside cell membranes, and they hold a stiff box shape there in prokaryotes.
As you can see, they had to build a 3D structure. Like I said, the hands-on component is still there. Hands-on component is still there when you're teaching technology. A lot of people think, well, if I'm teaching technology, then my kids no longer do hands-on materials. They still do. He built this structure. I let them go in, and there was this thing where you could build a video, any sort of video, and they made a rap video, and they start implementing structures and pictures. And then the substrips that you see, they put those on them on there themselves because they had to give me the function and the structure of that. And as you can see, the other two guys, they actually wrote the strip, but he wanted to actually do the rap, so he came up with the rap. And they have drawbacks and fade outs. All of that is a component on the actual screen that you're doing. And they have a good time doing it. We actually watch these videos in class, and we say, okay, what was okay about this, or how can we enhance this video? And then sometimes kids want to redo it, and sometimes we have contests. But this is taking the standard course of study, and it's making the kids want to learn this material. And as they're taking the EOC, my student said, Ms. Graham, I was thinking about that song as I was going, because this gives you a component of the structure. Now, what does this all entail? And then how does teaching this technology, how's it changed my teaching? It has. I feel like it has enhanced me as a teacher because now I'm collaborating more with my colleagues. I'm collaborating more with the students. Let's be honest, students now know more about technology than we do, right? They have all the smartphones and things. You can take those things and you can build a rapport with your kids because when they found something cool online, you can say, well, bring it in and then we'll try to tweak it to fit the curriculum. And we find ways to fit your curriculum and it makes students want to learn. How many times have you had a student get online and email you and say, Miss Graham, what are you, I found this online. You need to check it out before class and maybe come to class and find out. My kids do that all the time. Like, Miss Graham, check out this website. It's really cool on biology. And they help me enhance my teaching. Because when I left Winston-Salem State University, I went into the classroom thinking that I was going into a traditional classroom. Mooresville has made me a better leader because now I not only can teach a traditional classroom, but not only do I not want to teach a traditional classroom, I am now a facilitator of learning. I facilitate knowledge and how the kids go enhance their knowledge by using this technology. We have something called formative assessment data, and what that happens in that, I teach biology. All the biology teachers in my department, we have the same formative assessment test. And when our kids go in and they take that formative assessment test, we can see on a measure of how each student is doing in our class because you can see their ranking. You can see compared teachers. And a lot of people say, we don't want to be compared as teachers. Why not if it's going to enhance your teaching and your students' learning? We use this data to drive our technology usage, saying, okay, you did a digital portfolio on sales. My sales scores are really high, but the next person's sales scores are really low. What are you doing with your kids that I'm not doing so we can enhance? Vice versa. In ecology, my scores are mediocre in ecology. The next guy, my department head, he is phenomenal in ecology. And he has a great online tool that the kids go in and use. So now he's teaching me how to use that tool and my scores have went up. It's a lot of collaboration and you become one big family because now you're trying to reach a goal with the data and the technology. And without this technology piece, we would never be able to look at individual teachers so quickly and the students and how they're progressing. I can tell you about the students. However, I'm going to let the students come up and explain to you what takes place as a student. Mark is going to give you the perspective of a middle school student, but I can tell you that one-to-one teaching has really enhanced my teaching and has made me a better leader.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Miller. I am 13 years old. I'm from Mooresville, North Carolina. I definitely like language arts, science, and history. I like playing baseball and football, and I started using my laptop in the 4th grade. At Mooresville Middle School, we have core subjects such as algebra, pre-algebra, science, language arts, and North Carolina history. We also have electives every day such as physical education, exploring business technology, or foreign languages. My day starts entering the hallway of 8th graders with 400 students. Everyone different in their own way, but they each have one thing in common. Everyone wears the same book bag with a great big M on it. Instead of the book bag being filled with textbooks and notebooks, you just have the MacBook Air. My first class of the day is in science with Mr. Buddha. First, we start off by taking our attendance in Angel, which is a program on our laptops. As you've seen, science is a subject I like. I like to learn about the way the Earth is formed, and I also like to learn about Pangea. When I first heard about Pangea, I thought it was some type of foreign car. But then I got to look it up on my MacBook Air, and it turned out to be when all the continents were formed together as one big landmass. We also get to watch videos in Discovery Education, and that is a lot of help because it is easier to hear and watch an example of what we are learning than to read it out of a textbook. I then switched to language arts with Mrs. Smith. She is very creative when it comes to using our technology. In her class on our laptops, we discuss and reflect on different books we read, such as the book The Tears of a Tiger. This book is a lesson about not drinking and driving. We had researched a lot of records about drinking and driving over the past few years in North Carolina and all over the country. And we got some cool pictures online and put them on a poster that we hung outside in the hallway. And next I go to Mrs. Sarver's Spanish class. Here we use our laptops to research and learn various words and phrases in Spanish. For instance, the word nublado. I was hoping it was a Red Sox pitcher because, we need it this year. we struggled pretty bad. But it turns out it just means cloudy. Afterwards, I continued to Exploring Business Technology, where we practiced typing on a program called Typing Agent. We also sharpened our skills in keynote presentations. We recently worked on a project with different characteristics of businesses. Then lunch, my favorite. I'm like any other student who enjoys lunch because it is a time to take a break from schoolwork and relax with your friends. And eat. I continue to North Carolina history. Recently, we have done a project on the early colonies of North Carolina. My teacher gave us many choices on ways we could complete this project. I chose a comic life, which Ms. Graham showed you. You can do a lot of things in this. I did a newspaper article about Thomas Kerr and the Quakers. And we also presented that to the class. We also learned about a lot of things about our Tar Heel State. For instance, did anybody know that the Revolutionary War started the Tar Heel State? Well, I know my stuff because I looked it up on the MacBook Air. Winding down my day, I head to pre-algebra. I love interacting with my laptop in math because there are so many ways we can learn different strategies and practice our skills in my math lab and IXL, which are two great math programs online. Also in math class, we download video notes, which are just simply notes for a certain lesson we are learning in math. And I can also go back and study those notes before a test at the end of the week. We also have done a project with pumpkins. In this project, we had to weigh the pumpkin, but then we were to take the seeds out of the pumpkin and find the difference of the two and graph them on a spreadsheet as a scatter plot and a bar graph and compare our data with other groups. The Mooresville Graded School District is incredible. It's full of great teachers and administrators. I believe that the laptops we use keep me more interactive throughout the school day. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am now because I would still be in 2012. Thank you.
Troy Eccles. I'm a senior at Mooresville Senior High School. As you can see, I'm 17, and I'm really into politics and running. Those are my two things. At my school, I'm the captain of my track team. I'm actually student body president there, and I'm also the president of the Spanish club. I have many, many clubs, including Junior Civitans, Reach, and I was a chosen community tutor. I've actually been using my laptop since the 8th grade, but I wasn't able to take it home until the 9th. Since I've had the laptop, I can definitely say that it's impacted my learning for the better. We not only learn the same materials as the other schools, but we learn it faster in a new way and with style. I mean, how many people do you know that get a MacBook Air? Also, how many students do you know that can present a mind-blowing project and create a mind-blowing project without ever leaving their seat? I created this. I remember when I actually had to get up and go find a dictionary or a thesaurus to go find one of the answers to one of the questions that my teachers had asked. Class, does anybody know the meaning of constituent? Within 2 seconds, my hand is raised. Not because I knew the answer prior to the question, but because my computer did. I have every bit of assistance that I need right at my fingertips. It's helped me to excel in the classroom beyond measures. I cannot say. We have a class actually at our school where students learn to take apart and put back together, and they help other students fix their laptops. These will be the students that go to college and pursue this as a career, and they use what they've known since the 9th or 10th grade to make money. Also, applying to colleges is made so much easier thanks to 1-1. I can do things like send my transcripts electronically. This makes it go by so much quicker you would not even know. Also, I feel like I have a better chance of being admitted to colleges and universities because of these laptops. Not because I have one, but because of what they've done for my overall education and overall knowledge. I have more than your average student has to offer. Now that I think about it, no student at Mooresville is average. Now that I think there's no students, if you look at any of the schools around our school, we're nothing like them. Last year's class, senior class, they earned over $2 million worth of scholarship money. That broke our school's record by so much, it was crazy. We intend to do the same, me speaking for the class of 2013. Now that I've had my laptop for my entire 4 years of high school, I can most definitely see the point in getting them. Our administrators had this vision that seemed almost impossible to get a laptop into the hands of every student from the 4th to the 12th grade. I think about it and I'm still like, how did we do that? If they didn't have access to technology at home, now they do, and the school is there. We thank them for that. And lastly, I feel like it puts us ahead of everyone else. We're no longer in the year 2012. We're past it. We've left the 21st century because we're too busy lounging in the 22nd. Thank you.
All right, we have just a minute or two if you have any burning questions. Let me also say that if you want to know more about funding the shift to one-to-one, the Digital Learning Now team, working with the Getting Smart team, published a paper about 6 weeks ago called Funding the Shift. You can find it on digitallearningnow.com and then look for the Smart Series logo. In that paper, we featured Mooresville. We also featured Portugal, and we have Mario Franco, who helped engineer Portugal's shift to one-to-one with an innovative, subsidized, and parent pay laptop model. So you have great resources here in the room about one-to-one. Quick questions? Yes?
A couple. One is, and I think from Mark's talk, I guess textbooks are extinct now, and more. I mean, do we use textbooks at all?
Let's start with that. How much do you use textbooks? Mark or Troy?
We actually download the textbooks on our computer from Angel, which is basically our processing unit for the Mooresville Graded School District. So all our textbooks are on our laptop.
And that was,
Yeah.
and then the second one is, how does this integrate into home education?
Homeschooling, or do you want to take that?
Into homeschooling?
Yeah.
If a student is homeschooled in Mooresville, that's the parent's choice, and they can educate them however they like, but they do not receive the laptops because they're no longer students in Mooresville Graded School District when they make that choice.
But they can access. I mean, can they access the classroom? Can they access any of the resources of the public education system?
Not in homeschool. If they make that
I guess
choice
not
to no
unless they're
longer be
an
in
enrolled
Mooresville Graded
student.
School District
Right.
public schools, yeah. But I mean, if you're talking to our students when they go home and they work on their homework at school, yes, they can access anything. But if they're not public school students in Mooresville Graded
Yep.
School District, they cannot access it because that's
Alright.
part of being a member of Mooresville Graded School District.
Catch them afterwards if you have any other questions. We're going to shift gears now, and we're going to talk about a blended learning school model. So blended learning is when there's a shift for a portion of the day to an online environment. The most common blended learning model is a rotational model. There are some schools like Rocket Ship where students will rotate into a lab and then into a classroom. There are others, like Mike's school at KIPP Empower, where there's a classroom rotation where kids are rotating through different stations. So welcome Mike Kerr from KIPP Empower LA.
Great, thank you. It's good to be here. Is this, Perfect, great. So good afternoon, I am Mike Kerr. I am the principal of KIPP Empower Academy, which is in Los Angeles, California. I'm happy to be here with you guys today. I want to give you a little background information about our school. So we are located in South Central Los Angeles. We have about 330 students. We're K through 2 right now. We're in our 3rd year. Right now in South Central Los Angeles, only 4% of freshmen in high school will graduate from college. So our mission in KIPP Los Angeles, KIPP LA, is to get all of our students to and through college because the track record in our neighborhood schools is not very strong. 91% of our students do qualify for free and reduced price meals at our schools. To walk through our model, I first want to take a step back and go over what you see in a traditional classroom. We just heard about what's going on in one district in North Carolina and how far out of the norm they are compared to what's going on across the country. If you walk into most high schools, most middle schools, and even the majority of elementary schools across the country, you walk into a classroom, you see one teacher teaching a lesson to a whole class of students all at once. It's very difficult to do. What you end up having to do as a teacher is teach to the middle of the class and try to differentiate to those who are more advanced in the room and also try to differentiate down to students who are struggling in the classroom. At any given time, you have about a third of the students for whom the lesson is too easy and they're bored. Another third of the students in the classroom, it's a bit too far out of their reach right now, and so they're frustrated. Only about a third of the students will actually feel like the lesson is just right for them. So our goal, of course, is to get our kids to and through college, and we feel like this model is outmoded, antiquated, and is not right for our students. Before coming to California, I was the principal of a school in Brooklyn, New York, the Achievement First Crown Heights Elementary School. And as the founder of that school, I wanted to have our school's model be about small group instruction. I remember being that student in a classroom growing up in New Jersey and being bored because my teacher was delivering one lesson to the whole class all at once. And so what I had the money to do in New York is to actually hire 2 teachers per classroom. So in any given classroom in New York City, I was able to have 2 teachers. So to have one teacher who could focus on the students who are maybe more advanced in the room, giving them instruction at their just right level. Another teacher could focus on students who were maybe struggling a bit more but needed instruction in a different way at their level. And we can make sure they're constantly getting challenged and pushed to get the instruction they need to meet their needs. With this model of having 2 teachers in a room in New York City, we were able to far outperform the local district, the city, the state, and the wealthier suburbs outside of our school district. And at my school in New York, 80% of our kids qualified for free and reduced price lunches. So again, we had great results in New York. 99% of our kids were proficient when they left us in 4th grade in reading, and 100% of our kids were proficient in math, with 70% of them scoring the advanced category. So we had a great thing going at our school in New York, and by our 5th year, I trained my dean to take over, and I moved to California and was in for a nice surprise. Not like I didn't know the funding situation in California was different, but when you actually are living there and experiencing it, you get a chance to see just how different it is. In LA, I get about 38% of the funding that I did in New York City. I get 38% per child of what I had in New York. What I was banking on when I got there was what we had used in our previous elementary schools. Previously, we used a model of having 20 students in a classroom with 1 teacher because California subsidized having lower class sizes through what's called class size reduction funding. However, in the fall of 2009, when I was getting ready to start the planning phase for the school, they cut that for new charter schools. So existing charter schools and public schools were grandfathered in, but new schools, including mine, would no longer get that expected revenue. So for me, that was about $112,000 in revenue that vanished before our school even opened the doors. Now, to do this, I did not want to obviously I couldn't afford to have 2 teachers in a room like I did in New York. I went from 5 classes of 20, and I had to go to 4 classes of 28 students in a room. So we had to dramatically increase our class sizes in order to make this happen, which is actually what's going on in many school districts all across the country, particularly in Texas, Florida, and California, where the funding is quite low by comparison with the rest of the country. So we have 1 fewer class per grade. By doing that, we have 1 fewer teacher to hire, 1 fewer classroom to get the materials, supplies, and furniture for. And what we did is we have 4 classes of 28 with 15 laptops in every single classroom. So we don't have a lab, and I'd love to have our kids take a laptop home, but I don't trust 5-year-olds right now with a laptop. Maybe when they get older I will, but not yet. By doing so, by going from 5 classes of 20 to 4 classes of 28, the Dell Foundation did a study of our school last year and saw how over the first 2 years, the additional student revenue per class, by being more efficient with how many students we have in the room, by having 2 fewer teachers per grade, so instead of having 4 teachers, we have, instead of having 5 teachers, we have 4. By having that financial benefit, obviously there's costs involved because we have more technology to purchase and more software as well. We have a savings of $965 per student. So for many districts across the country, and for our school in particular, it really helped us meet our bottom line. And me as an administrator, it helped us remain fiscally solvent and be able to open up our school and stay in existence, particularly as every single year in California, we're facing more and more cuts. Now, with this model, I did not want to go back to say, okay, well, look, folks, we can only have 28 students in a classroom. It's going to be really difficult to try and make any kind of model of small group instruction work. I did not want to have to go back to do something like this. Again, students should deserve to be taught at their just right level, to be challenged with what's appropriate for them. So the way we made it work is I actually, all of my administrative team, and I do have a couple floater teachers who can push into the classrooms during certain parts of the day. I can't afford to have that second teacher in the room during the day, but I can have a second body, a second administrator, a second floating teacher in the room during certain parts of the day to really make sure we have smaller groups during reading and during math. So if we split a class in half, as you see on the left, I can have half the class with one teacher, half with the other teacher. If I split the class into thirds, like we do during reading, I have one group with one teacher, one group with another, and the other group is on the computers using adaptive technology. So what they're doing on the computers is they're engaging with programs that will cycle them forward if they're accelerating, and if they're zooming ahead, it'll keep going with them because it constantly assesses where they are. If they're struggling, it'll circle back and make sure they're mastering skills before it takes them back to where they need to be. So it's completely adaptive to what their needs are, and it also can really help meet a need in our classroom for our kids. Now this occurs during certain parts of the day, but it's actually quite rare, and I'll show you in a minute what it actually looks like for the majority of the day. So we can, during certain parts, particularly during reading, have that second body in the room, that second adult in the room. And it looks like this. We have one teacher in one corner on the rug with her group. We have another at a U-shaped or a horseshoe table with her group on the, over there. And the rest of the kids are at their computers. If it's say a first or second grade room, when we have students become more independent, then we can actually have students in the computers as well as working independently at their desks in the room. And what they do is they rotate from one teacher to the computers to the other teacher, okay? However, in a first grade and second grade room, in particular, there's parts of the day where we only have one adult in the room. So that's where we really need to make sure that rotation takes place. And it looks like this. Again, you can divide the class in half. Half the class can be with one teacher. The other half are on the computers. Or you can split the kids into three groups with one group with one teacher, one group on the computers, and the other group working independently, either on a project together or reading independently together. By doing so, I can ensure to all of our parents that even though we have 28 students in a classroom, that in reading, writing, math, and science, your student, your child, will never be in a group larger than 14. So 14-to-1 ratio, which far surpasses what most public schools can offer their students. In particular, when we can divide the class into thirds, or in some cases even into fourths, we actually can get maybe a 6-to-1 ratio of the child to the adult, which is great. Now we're going to take a look and see what it looks like in our classroom. Here is one of our teachers working with her small group. As you can see, she's got kids working independently next to her. But I think our video is going to really help portray this a bit better for us.
When the California budget crisis hit, we lost out on a key source of funding known as class size reduction. New and growing charters didn't have access to this pool of funding.
In essence, we lost about $200,000 from the state. So to make up for that, we had to increase our class sizes from 5 classes of 20 to 4 classes of 28. However, we didn't want to have that adversely affect the quality of education our students received.
We had to come up with a new and innovative way to provide high-quality education to our children here in South Los Angeles.
So we chose to adopt the blended learning model for our kids. Blended learning means that our students both learn from the teachers as well as from the computers to make sure our students are in small groups for the 4 core content areas.
Our blended learning model has 3 configurations. During science and writing, half of the class rotates between the lead teacher and the computers. In reading, we divide the class into 3 groups that rotate between 2 teachers and a computer station. During math, the class is divided between 2 teachers who may utilize the computers for additional support. This allows the classrooms to have 2 adults in the room for most of the day and ensures a 14-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio or better.
I didn't know what small group instruction was before I came to KIPP. It was always having a class of 30 to 35 kids and kind of teaching to the middle, hoping that the high kids don't get too bored and the low kids kind of catch up.
So the small group instruction really allows us to differentiate our lesson plans for the students no matter what their needs are. They're rotating in specific centers and stations, as well as small groups with their teachers, be it an intervention teacher or even their classroom teacher.
Keeping computers inside the classroom rather than utilizing a separate computer lab is also critical to providing a cohesive learning environment. The computers can be utilized throughout the day in various subjects as needed. This model ensures that the students working on the computers are integrated in the classroom setting with their teachers and classmates.
The technology in the classroom serves three roles. First, it frees up the teachers to work with small groups. Second, it develops the students' 21st century skills. Third, because it uses adaptive technology, it will zoom the students forward if they're accelerating, and it'll cycle back if they're struggling.
The computers are not intended to replace the teacher. They're intended to focus our attentions better and more systematically on what are the needs of each of our individual children.
They come in a lot of times not having any experience with the computer. I teach them how to log in and how to develop basic computer skills.
By having our students rotate on and off the computers throughout the day and working in small groups with their teachers, they're receiving a much better education and they're loving the learning process.
And so these are some of the results that we've received also over the past 2 years. In our first year, at the end of our first year, our kindergartners, 96% of them scored proficient or advanced on the MAP test, which is a nationally normed test in reading as well as in math. A majority of our students, as you can see, scored in the top quartile on the MAP test. That's in our first year. Our second year, this is a different test, just to show that our results are both of our different tests as well. This is on the STEP test, which comes from the University of Chicago. 91% of our students scored proficient or advanced on this as well, this test as well. And you can see the majority of our kids, 68%, actually were in blue, so they're in the advanced category. So we're really trying to get our kids to, again, on that path to and through college to be accelerated. And by having a teacher working with them in small groups as well as working on the computers, they're able to really make sure their needs are met and they're not sitting back bored, they're not sitting there frustrated, they're getting exactly what they need. Also, in terms of our teacher and parent satisfaction, our school, out of the 125 KIPP schools across the country, we ranked 5th in overall parent satisfaction and 6th in overall teacher satisfaction. And what plagues many schools across the country is having teacher retention challenges. And so for us in our third year, knock on wood, we have not lost a single teacher yet. So that's really exciting for us. And teachers are finding that their job is much easier for them because they're able to work with smaller groups. They're not having to try and teach these mammoth lessons to the whole class all at once, but instead they're getting a chance to work with their kids and get to know them better. In terms of those implications for teachers, as I mentioned, the teachers are working with more manageable group sizes. They're not working with all the kids in the class at once, trying to create one lesson that's going to meet the needs of every single person in the room. They can instead really plan for the kids in their groups, and they can collaborate with other teachers who have similar groupings to make sure they're working together to meet the needs of their kids. They're getting to know their kids much better than they would be before. They're also getting lots of data because both offline and online data. When they're getting a chance to meet with the students more individually, they're getting a chance to assess them more regularly. And also on the computers, our kids are getting a chance to take assessments on the computers, and that gives us a lot of data as to how they're progressing both with our online content as well as with our offline content. Also, because of all that extra data, we can really inform our parents better about how their students are progressing in our classroom. And also, we can enhance their learning, particularly if they have computer access at home. And I'd love for our kids to have that access. I'd love to put a laptop in every home to make sure that our kids can continue to further their learning at home. Although we have some challenges in South Central Los Angeles right now in terms of internet access and bandwidth. Also, our instruction time gets maximized because our schedule is so rigid that our teachers really need to make sure they're staying within those blocks of time because of having people rotating in and out to cover reading or to cover math and to push in and be that second body in the room. In terms of our students, our kids are getting instruction at their just right level, so our kids are performing better than what they would have been doing had they not been in this program. Again, they're not feeling that frustration level, not feeling that boredom that you see in most classrooms across the country. And again, I can promise every child that they're going to be in a group that's 14 or fewer in reading, writing, math, and science, which is a really great, important promise to be able to share with a family. Our kids are enjoying the learning process. They love being on the computers because not only is it fun, but it's also engaging, and they're learning a lot at the same time. And they're building the 21st century skills as well. We've got students who are going home and actually sharing, who are showing their families, showing their parents how to use the computers. I'm guessing you're seeing a similar thing in North Carolina as well, where parents are coming to school thanking us and are now saying, hey, I want to go back to school because of what their child is actually teaching them how to do. The Common Core test is coming up in a matter of just a few years. And so for our students, we're able to actually start preparing them for the Common Core now. Our second graders are typing, and when I started this program at our school, I never thought that in second grade we'd be showing our kids how to be typing, 10 words per minute, 20 words per minute, on and on, which is really great. And our kids are doing a lot of work in second grade on nonfiction reading, so we're able to really build those skills that the kids are going to need to be successful, both in the Common Core and in their college and careers. In the second grade, we're giving the kids a little bit more ownership of what they're doing on the computer so they can take ownership and learn the kind of skills and research the kind of things that are really important to them, they want to learn about. Now, the last thing before I open up the Q&A is I often get asked what the student experience looks like. So I'm going to share that with you right now. When our students do log in to the computers, their screen will look like this. And the reason that we have to use a system like this is because when we have 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, we end up using a lot of different programs. So we use 2 or 3 different reading programs, 2 or 3 different math programs. And to have a 5-year-old have to learn a different password and username for each of those programs is a lot to ask. So we try to simplify it for them. So all they do is they go in and they simply click on that button. They click on what their class name is, and they go in and click at their student name. And they have a password that is just theirs. So it's their own little password. It's a picture password, so it makes it easy for them. They don't have to learn some kind of lengthy password with all these letters and whatnot. And once they click on the images that are theirs, it takes them into the programs. So they get a chance to choose the programs they want to use at their school. And so this is ST Math, which is one of our favorite programs that kids love to use. And it takes them straight through. And they're in. And there's no need to have to type in their own username, their own password, to have to wait and do all that kind of stuff. It forgoes that whole process. So by having a single sign-on like this, it makes it really easy for our kids to use the program. Because again, we don't want to lose any instruction time for our kids. And with that, I'm going to log off so that if Cedric is on his computer right now in his classroom, he is not wondering what's going on. And I'll take some questions if you have them. Yes, sorry, I guess you.
No, go ahead, Anna.
I was just going to say, you mentioned that there's a lot of parent satisfaction. Is it because of the computers? What would you say is the thing that makes them so pleased about this?
So let me, why don't you just quickly paraphrase the question so you get it for the tape?
Got you. So what is sort of the reason behind the parent satisfaction? Is it the computers or is it other things? Obviously, the computers are just one aspect of what we're doing, and so I do think that there's a synergy involved with our school. I do think that we've got great teachers at our school, so I think that having a teacher that really cares about their child is really important to them. But I do know that the kids really enjoy the learning process. They enjoy both the one-on-one time they have with their teacher, which again they wouldn't experience in a more traditional environment, but also they're loving to be able to go on the computers and learn as well. And for a lot of our programs, we do let the kids go on at home to continue to further their learning, which is really exciting. We don't do that for all the programs because sometimes we don't know if it's them or their brother that's on the computer at home. So that's kind of one of the things that we have to work on. Yeah, our parents are really enjoying it for a whole host of reasons, I think.
Yes.
When the children log on, do they go straight to like an individualized learning plan? And are the problems that they're going to be looking at, are they Common Core? Or are they an area of difficulty and it's like remediating or a little bit of everything?
Okay, good question. So asking when the students log on, is there a plan for them that's preset? And then asking if it's Common Core aligned or if it's remedial. So There's no plan. It's not like they log in and it takes them through steps, which actually you'll hear in the next presentation of a school that does that for their students. For us, being at the elementary level, the content is not, being that we're working with the kindergarten through second grade kids, a lot of our schools across the country that are doing this kind of thing are noticing that the software products that are out there aren't really as strong as they are in the secondary level for our kids. And so what we're doing is we're having the students go on certain programs that we know will meet their needs. And in many cases, it can tie, if we want to, we can have it tied directly into what they're doing in that class that day with that teacher. So a teacher can actually override this system so they can go and do independent practice. They can do independent work that's aligned with what they're doing that day in the classroom. Other days, they can just go and just zoom ahead or be remediated if they can. For the most part, we do try to make sure we have programs that are Common Core aligned, but I will say everyone loves to say they're Common Core aligned, and it only was a matter of months, or a few weeks ago, that the Common Core, at least my consortium with the Common Core, actually released what the questions would look like. So those who said they were Common Core aligned before the questions got released, I kind of say, are you really Common Core aligned if you don't know what the questions are in the Common Core? I mean, really? So that's not as important for me about being Common Core aligned, because I think that needs to be vetted more in terms of what it actually means.
So if the child has difficulty, they're working through a problem, and they have difficulty, what can they do at that place?
Okay.
Are they allowed to raise their hand and ask their teacher help, or what do they do?
Good question. So the question is, if a student's having a difficulty with the program they're using, what can they do? So there is actually a button on the top where they can raise their hand. And so if an administrator is in a room, or if our technology specialist who does rotate between the rooms, if we see that, and we have actually a dashboard that shows whose hand is raised, we know we can go to that child if we need to. But in many cases, the program will actually catch that and will then take them back and will reteach something to them. Okay, but it depends on the program. Some programs do that more seamlessly. Others may require more of an adult intervention. And so in those cases, then we have an adult, whenever we get a chance, we'll sit down with that child and we'll work with them.
Okay, another question? I think we have time for two more. Yes.
Hi, yes. So what percentage of the student's learning experience is mediated through the technology in terms of learning instruction versus practice? And what percentage of the time is instruction versus practice when working face-to-face with the teacher?
Okay, so you're asking what percent of the time, both with the teacher and with the computer, is actual instruction versus practice, right? So it's going to depend on where they are in that unit. So if it's something new, if they're learning something new, then the majority of the time on the computer, the majority of the time with the teacher, will be actually in the teaching cycle. But once they actually have been exposed to that and are learning that and have had some degree of practice with that, then it'll transform and move more towards practice. In terms of, so it's going to depend on where they are in the program or where they are in that particular unit. In terms of the school day, 11% of the day for our kindergartners is spent in front of laptops, and 16% for first and second grade students. So it's about 90 minutes for first and second grade kids. In kindergarten, it's about 60 minutes. I felt that was enough time that was age appropriate for our kids. So they're on the computers for about 20 to 30 minutes at a time in kindergarten. And first grade's about the same time. In second grade, their stamina is a bit longer, and we feel they can be on there for 25 to 30 minutes at any given time. Beyond that, I just think it's a little too much right now, personally, because again, we're sort of easing into this and want to make sure that our kids feel like it's fun, but it's also just one component of our school day. We do have a longer school day, so kids do get a chance to do hands-on learning in science, hands-on learning in math, hands-on learning in other subjects. We want to make sure we have a good blend of all that.
All right. Other question? All right. Yes.
Back to the finances, just for a second, when you were talking about when you went to California and you saw it was $5,000 or something per capita expense. Is that still the budget that you were working within, the constraints that you're working within financially, fiscally?
Yes, yes. It's gone down a little bit each year. And it's looking like for next year it's going to be capped because of Prop 30 passing at the state level. So we should actually have that frozen for one more year. But up until now, each year it's gone down a bit.
So the achievements that you were showing us in your presentation
Yes.
In the most expensive city in the country. Would you thank Mike with me?
Great, thanks.
That is, it's an incredible story. One of the frustrating things is that you referred to is that the tool set is not quite where we'd like it to be. And what Mike and his team have done is really put a front end on a number of different tools, and they're making it work. A guy that has really done that well and built, really engineered an entire math program is Joel Rose. In 2009, Time magazine called School of One one of the most important inventions of the year. And it's because it's really an engineered math program that takes multiple forms of content and uses a computer algorithm to make recommendations to teachers. So it's a great example of the kind of advanced tools in a coherent program that we should see more of in the next few years. Joel Rose of New Classrooms.
Thanks, Tom. It's an honor to be here. Thank you all for taking the time to learn a little bit about what we do. Just a little housekeeping to kick this off. Tom mentioned I started something called School of One at the New York City Department of Education. Then left to start a new nonprofit called New Classrooms. We have a new model called Teach to One. We're currently operating Teach to One in Chicago and in Washington, D.C. And Teach to One is now powering School of One in New York City. There are a lot of similarities and approach, and the approach is similar, but there are a number of differences. When we talk about Teach to One, School of One, what we're doing, it really begins talking about this guy, Horace Mann. So Horace Mann grows up in Massachusetts at a time where there is this tremendous tension between Catholics and Protestants. And he makes it his life's mission to create a more tolerant, civilized society. And so he goes with his wife for inspiration. They get on a boat and they go to Prussia, where in fact they see this. One teacher and about 30 kids in a room. And they go, aha, that's what we need. I see the future, because that approach will teach kids from different backgrounds to learn to coexist. It solved the problem that he was trying to solve. This was back in 1843. Now, since then, we've gone from the stagecoach to the jet airplane. We've gone from the telegraph to the smartphone. We've gone from antiquated medicine to high-tech medical equipment. But we have not changed this fundamental view of how instruction is delivered. We still have one teacher and about 30 kids in a room. And if there's one thing that we know today, that any teacher can tell us today, that he probably didn't know back in 1843, it is how hard it is to differentiate instruction. It is this beautiful buzzword that people love, thrown, oh, just differentiate instruction, no problem. But the reality is, it is really, really hard. I'm a former 5th grade math teacher. And in my class, I remember I had one student who was shy, who hated to work in groups, who loved technology. One wanted lots of attention but hated to handwrite. One was out of the country for 3 years, not in any school. One read books that were 3 years ahead but didn't want to look like a nerd. One played hours of video games every night. One was a talented artist who needed to see things visually. One 2 years ahead in math but a year behind in reading. And one loved to apply math concepts to sports. Any teacher will tell you they have these kids in their classroom and more. How do we possibly expect any teacher to personalize learning? This, by the way, is just 10 kids out of 25, and it's one class period out of 5. And so our approach with Teach to One is to go that if we're serious, if we're really serious about meeting the needs of each and every student, the only way to do that is to view live, teacher-led instruction, the kind of instruction we just think about when we think about what school is, as one way. And it may be the best way, but it's not the only way we know kids can learn. We know they can learn collaboratively from each other in different size groups. We know they can learn with virtual tutors located anywhere around the world. And we know they can learn by themselves, either with software or with printed material. And so we call all these different ways of delivering instruction modalities. And by integrating all of these modalities into one single learning environment, we move from a model that looks like this, which is what we're all familiar with, to one that looks more like this. And the reason this is so important is because in a multimodal classroom environment, we can now contemporaneously teach multiple things. So that teacher can only teach one thing. She's only human, as can that teacher up there, but every table can be learning something different. Every student with a virtual tutor can learn something different. Every student working by themselves up in that corner can learn something different. And so what Teach to One is the integration of multiple modalities of instruction into one learning environment in order to enable personalization. It is not bumper sticker material, but that's all it is that we're doing. Let me tell you how we get that done. The first thing we do is we start with a skill map. This is all based on the Common Core standards for real. It really is based on the Common Core standards. And we have math. Every skill has sub-skills, those skills have sub-skills, and so on and so forth. Now we work with kids in grades 6 to 8, but our skill map actually starts at the 4th grade and goes all the way up to the 10th grade. We don't just assume because you're in 6th grade, you know everything from 4th grade and 5th grade. Horace Mann did, we don't. We administer a diagnostic assessment to see what are the skills each student knows and what are the skills they don't know. And we call the skills they don't know their playlist. And no two students have the same one. You might be on a 7th grade level in algebra and an 8th grade level in geometry. We actually don't even care what grade you're in. What we care about is what you know and what you don't know so we can figure out what it is you should learn next. So with that information, we have a profile of each student. We know what skills they're working on. And through surveying the student, the parent, in some cases the previous year's teacher, we can generate a hypothesis for what types of modalities might be most effective for each student. In this case, it looks like virtual live instruction might be an effective modality, and we learn a little bit about their interests. Now, this is the kind of information that lives in the heads of teachers. They build up over the course of a full school year. Then at the end of the year, it kind of just goes poof, and the next teacher has to build all that information up again. Well, we keep that information. So now we know a lot about Joseph. We know he needs to learn how to explain patterns. Virtual live instruction might be an effective modality. If they have sports, all the better. What we need now is content, a lesson that teaches explaining patterns, leverages live virtual instruction, somehow integrates sports. And so our team actually looked at over 40,000 middle school math lessons from large publishers, small ones, folks you heard of, folks you haven't, and chose what we thought were the very best 10,000 of them. Some of those lessons are live lessons delivered by teachers. Some of them are virtual, some of them are collaborative, and some of them are independent. And we put data about each of those lessons in our system. This is a lesson from McGraw-Hill, teaches kids how to add fractions, takes 29 minutes, great for kids who like music, or whatever the case may be. Okay? And so now we have all this data about each kid, and we have all this data about all these lessons. The question is, what do you do with all of that data? Well, here's what we don't do. What we don't do is say to the teacher, here's all the data. Good luck trying to figure out what to do tomorrow. And so instead, that's where we created what we call the learning algorithm. And the best way to explain it is to think about what happens when you go to the airport. There are weather problems in different cities. Certain planes only fit at certain gates. The technology organizes all of this for us. We just look up at the monitor, and we see the status of our flight, and we see our gate. It's the same concept here. Our algorithm takes all the data about each student, all the data about all the lessons, and with that creates a unique schedule for each teacher and each student each day, based on the lessons that are going to be most successful for each one. And then at the end of every day, students take an online assessment. And with the data that we get every day, we can do 4 things. Number 1, we determine whether the student is ready to move on to the next skill on her playlist. If she does well, she moves on. If not, she gets the same skill but in a different way the next day. 2, we update the profile. So just like Amazon.com learns more about who you are as a consumer every time you shop online, we learn more about each learner, and we can use that information as we create subsequent schedules for that one student. 3rd, we go back to the content providers, and we say, Houghton Mifflin, your decimals lessons are doing great. Your fractions lessons, not so much. Or the great with girls or not with boys, or different kinds of subgroups. Some of the publishers have been in business for 100 years. They have no idea that Chapter 12 is great and Chapter 17 is terrible. We're becoming more like an iTunes. Instead of buying albums, we buy songs. Instead of buying textbooks, we buy lessons. We pay them on the basis of how often we use them, and we schedule them in part on the basis of how good they actually are. And then finally, over time, as more students are enrolled in the system itself gets smarter. It says, okay, Maria, who likes dance and is learning about area of a triangle, I've had 50,000 students like this before, and there's a great lesson from IXL and another one from Mathalicious, and so it can use that information to predict what might work for students who exhibit similar patterns. So that's the concept. What I'd love to do now is show you about a 3.5-minute video that will show you what this looks like when it all comes into action.
What we see in lots of urban schools is a wide variety of student levels. We've got schools with kids coming into middle school on a 3rd grade level.
They're from different countries, they have different cultures, they speak different languages.
They can be kinesthetic, they can be verbal, they can be visual learners. How do you actually teach to this diverse group of students?
School of One is based on one simple idea, that we are organizing an entire school around the needs of every one student.
I like the online tutors because you get to work with different teachers from all around the world. The other day I was working with a teacher from North Carolina.
Edwin, how many 3s did we just have?
5.
Right.
I like how we get to use computers to learn math because I never did that before.
There are 8 different ways that students can learn, and 5 of them are live, and 3 of them are on computers.
I like to work with other people, but not too many people. You're working with a small group of kids, one teacher and about 8 kids.
I like the communication with the tutor online. I get scared sometimes if I have to look at a teacher and ask them the question, but sometimes you just type the question and they answer it.
At the end of the day, what happens is the students take a 5-question assessment. If they've passed their test, they move on to another skill.
When it says green, that's like a...
When you have a yellow, you kind of have a down phase because you're kind of sad and you want to achieve more because you know you could do better.
When you get red on your modality, you're like, ah!
If they have not passed the test, then the algorithm figures out a new way to teach the student that specific skill.
As the algorithm gets smarter, as it learns the student's skills, it learns their levels, the student gets smarter. The teachers get smarter. We all grow at the same time.
One of the main ideas of School of One is to have technology take a lot off teachers' plate so they can focus on doing what they came into this profession to do.
The algorithm allows us to teach. It allows us to do what we are trained to do. It allows us to do what the Department of Education has invested in us.
School of One is making me the amazing teacher that I always wanted to be. And I'm grateful for that.
One of the teachers overheard a student say to another student, "I am smart. I'm not stupid." It had made her wonder, how long has this one student been harboring the belief that she was stupid? And the only thing that was really stupid was the way we were teaching her.
Any one of these children can grow up to be anything they want to be. President of the United States, a teacher like me. But because of circumstances of birth, they don't have the opportunity. And the School of One gives them that opportunity. It levels the playing field.
I love my teacher.
I love the algorithm.
I love when a parent comes in and says, "What are you doing here?" Because my daughter is doing all sorts of wild math.
I'm a lot better student now.
It really helps me learn faster.
I love when I see a kid excited about this one connection that was just made.
I love School of One.
Every student in New York City is waiting for School of One.
So hopefully you saw in that video how we've tried to reimagine the entire delivery model, from changing the physical space to using technology to help organize learning. But kids don't just spend their time online. They work collaboratively, they work with teachers. We use technology as one way of delivering instruction and as the way to schedule, to organize the logistics around implementation of this multimodal type of an environment. Now, we've been at this for about 3 years now, our team has, and we're still figuring this out. I think our model today is probably 60% baked. Every day we learn something about how the technology can get better, how our professional development can get better, how we can improve the academics. We've seen some exciting results. So after the very first year of implementation of School of One, there were 3 schools implementing the program. One that had the most experience saw positive and statistically significant gains. A second school was even, and a third school went down versus peer schools. the school that went down, the state said, they did a report and they came into the school and they said, look, we found 100 things wrong with the school, we need to shut it down. There are 3 things right with it, one of which is School of One, but we cannot, it's not fairy dust. So we need a certain level of capacity in order to be successful. School A, which had a great implementation, said, look, Joel's leaving New York City, the whole thing is in transition, we're going to take a little bit of a break. But School B said, we want to give this 1 more year. And so last year was the 2nd year of implementation of School of One, and here are the results that we saw there. We gave every student the Terra Nova in both the fall and the spring and can look at the gain rates and compare those to national means. We saw a 22-point gain on the Terra Nova at the 6th grade level versus 11 points as a national mean. At the 7th grade level, we saw a 12-point gain versus 6 points as the national mean. And then in 8th grade, which is really where we focus a lot of our energy. We want kids to spend their first year, we fill gaps to make sure they have the right foundation so they can be successful in 8th grade and be high school ready. And that's where we saw our greatest gains, 23 points versus 6 points as a national mean. Now, from a policy perspective, what was especially interesting and exciting about these results, and again, this is just one school, 1 year, no one's saying we've cracked the code here. But what was especially interesting to us was, if you follow New York City education politics a little bit, you might know that New York City released the value-added data of every teacher in the city about 6 months ago. And so you can go online and look up any school and see what % of teachers, based on that metric at least, are rated above average or high. So for example, the KIPP schools, 80% in math are rated above average or high, Uncommon schools 100%. This was based on the 2009-2010 school year, which was the year before we started working in the school. So the question is, how much of the results that we've seen can be attributed to stacking the deck with great teachers versus how much is really the model itself? And what we saw was interesting, only 10%, meaning 10% of the teachers rated above average or high, and we were still getting some of those outside gains. Now, obviously in any school, the better the teachers, the better the results. But what we think we're learning is that with new types of models, new next generation models, smart use of technology, we can see some extraordinary gains being made at all levels of the teaching profession. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
Pretty cool, huh? Could we, at some day, do you see a bigger portion of a school day operating this way, with an algorithm guiding teachers and using dynamic scheduling?
Sure. I think what's important is not necessarily the algorithm or the scheduling, that's part of it, but what's important is that we actually dedicate some real time and money and energy towards designing new ways of learning. Think about the hundreds of million dollars we spend on designing new airplanes or spacecrafts or cars. We don't really spend much time or money designing a different classroom experience that then can be shared with the rest of the country. So we need folks designing new ways of delivering science instruction and literacy instruction. And yes, I can see a world one day where states, districts, or even principals, instead of adopting a math textbook, they adopt one of these different types of approaches, one of these models. And then those model providers actually help share in the accountability for outcomes. It could be that some folks do more than one subject. Could be we just do one subject.
Okay. Yes?
Did you explore at all violating the age structure of learning with this model with integrated algorithm and schooling? Don't necessarily subscribe to age orientation as much as subscribe to learning capability.
So we do use age cohorts, meaning all the 6th graders have math, then all the 7th graders have math, and then all the 8th graders have math. The reason for that is a couple of reasons. One is just logistically easier, but two is, when you have kids working collaboratively, and if you have 6th graders working with 8th graders, it can get kind of a little funny. 8th graders don't want to be viewed as working at the 6th grade level, so we just thought it was easier to sort of keep it with age-based groupings for social reasons.
How do you think that would work? I mean, if you could ignore the personality issues, what puts us in an age bracket with a model like yours?
I think the main reason to do it is for the social and personality reasons. I mean, there's no reason from a content perspective. We've got kids, as I said in the video, in middle school working on a 3rd grade level. They could, in theory, learn with 3rd grade kids. I just don't know if that could create other problems.
But you've really engineered a competency-based environment where kids are moving at their own pace, right?
Correct. And it's all mixed up each day. So you might be, with a group of fourth graders one day, a group of seventh graders the next day, because you're not labeled as a fast learner or a slow learner. It's really where you are in that particular skill.
You developed something called sort of the PAR value. Like how many experiences does it take on average for a kid to learn a particular concept? That seems like it's really useful.
Right, so what we do for every skill in our skill map is we have a concept we call PAR, which is how many lessons do we think it should take the average student to master a particular skill. So if you're learning how to add fractions with unlike denominators, that might be a PAR 4. But once you've learned that, subtracting fractions with unlike denominators might be a PAR 2. And so every day we see where each student is against PAR. And if they're at PAR or below, it's green. You heard the student talking about, I'm not green, I'm okay. If it's above PAR, it becomes red. So the teachers really manage by exception. They look at every day. If you didn't pass your test that day, but you've only had 2 exposures and it's a PAR 4, it's still green. No one's worried about it. If you get to 5, 6, then it will turn red. So the PAR is really what sort of helps us manage the outliers.
Right. You had a question?
How many times a week or a month or a quarter do you allow teachers to pull together for like data team meetings or data reviews? Is that important within this model?
So how did teachers work together in your model?
Hugely important. We build in a common planning time every day. In fact, because we're serving all the 6th graders, all the 7th graders, and all the 8th graders at once, it actually frees up time for them to meet as a team. They all have iPads, and they're looking for the kids who are red. Who are the kids who are either taking too long to learn a particular skill? Why is Johnny struggling with circumference of a circle? Oh, he's multiplying or he's dividing, whatever the case may be. So they use that data to drive common planning time each day. Yep.
Yeah.
Can the parents access the data of their individual child at home?
So can parents see data?
Not only can they, in fact, it's one of the things that kids complain about the most, because it says, my parent have to see every test all the time. But now what we're putting in as a new feature, where not only can the parent see it at home, the student can actually go online, see what's coming up next. So if our algorithm says, look, we don't think, Johnny, you know how to do area of a triangle, because our diagnostic says you don't know how to do it. And he goes, no, I know how to do it, because my elder sister sat down with me, and I practiced, and I know how to do it. He signs up for a prove-it slip. He comes in the next day. He gets an online assessment. If he gets a perfect score, he gets the credit for passing that skill without using any class time. So we've tried to be much smarter about how we use out-of-class time, both from the parent's perspective, but also to giving the kid an opportunity to accelerate her learning.
So in the last session, you asked the question about sort of an individual learning plan. So here you have an example of a really intelligent front end that's sitting on different bodies of content that can take into account the way students learn. So does this look a little bit closer to what you had in mind? So I think one of the most important concepts of this decade that you introduced is this idea of a customized playlist. That, like for a lot of people like me, was sort of a conceptual breakthrough. A lot of us think that's a pretty big deal.
Well, look, once you sort of break the Horace Mann, one teacher and 28 kids in a room, and you say, wait, let's just not assume that. I mean, a lot of schools today, they say, let's talk about innovation. Okay, let's put one teacher, 28 kids in an 800 square foot room, and then we'll have the conversation about innovation. It's game over. Think differently about all the inputs, and how would you do it if you could really design things from scratch? And in doing that, you realize that everything else is so much more customized in the world. Why can't learning be just as customized? Yep.
Is there any application that is in your program that shows kind of an integration between the subjects, such as math and science, putting those two together, I hear a lot of skill teaching. Where are you? Is there any application inside of the program?
So the question's about application within Teach to One?
So let me answer, there's 2 questions. I'm going to unpack both of those. So we're currently focused on math. Ultimately, we can see ways to have this be implemented in other content areas. But for now, the main thing it's doing is it's being, I think, positively provocative in the other content areas. So there was a social studies teacher who said to me, you know, I was in class one day, I taught a lesson, I said, okay, now we're going to move on. And the kid raised his hand and said, wait, why are you moving on? I don't get it yet. And in all her years of teaching, no kid had ever said that to her before, but that she didn't have a good answer for it. So that is useful. In terms of application within the model, That's why I had this chart, just in case I was asked this very question. One of the things we've done in Teach to One is we've really changed the whole structure of the program. Over a 2-week period, we call it a round. Each day, there's a 90-minute block of time, and students experience 2 sessions. The first kind of session, which is the blue circle, is called a pickup session. These are the discrete skills we want kids to know. Area of a triangle, circumference of a circle, factoring binomials, those kinds of things. But then we've also sort of laced across the round a task, a project, a problem-based learning, where at the end of that period they have a task demonstration where they have to apply their learning. So for example, one of our tasks is at the end of a 2-week period, students have to demonstrate whether or not they choose to buy a hybrid car. And the lessons, the rectangular lessons involve rate equals distance times time and tax rebates and all the sorts of things that sort of build up to that so they can demonstrate and apply their learning at the end of that period. They also have a playlist quiz at the end where they apply all the things they learn in both task and in pickup over the 2-week period. So answer is absolutely.
Are those students very well aware that that's what they're doing? They're applying what they've actually learned, or is it something like hide the medicine in them?
No, they know that the 5 question assessments that we do each day count for one thing, and then their demonstrations count for something else, and they know that they are involved in applying these things.
Joel, I've been in some online discussions in the last week with people that are in favor of passion-driven or interest-driven learning, and they're worried that competency-based models like this feel like testing all the time. You end every day with a quiz. How do you think about that from the student experience standpoint? Do you think they experience that as testing all the time?
We had a student, it was a tour going on, and one of the members of the tour went to a student and said, "What do you think about taking a test every day?" And the student said, "We don't take tests, we take assessments." They don't think of it like tests. They know that these things called assessments actually help to guide their own instruction. It's for their own benefit, and so they view it as just a natural part of the learning process. The playlist quiz are a little bit more high stakes for them as a way they conceive it, but not the daily assessments.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes.
So then are the actual quizzes or tests what determine their grades?
Yeah, so the teachers determine their grades. What we do is we share with each of the teachers what the best practices are. Right now we're in 8 different schools of what different schools do it. So they may say 40% of your grade is how many skills you've mastered, 20% is your task demonstration, 10% is homework, some of it's classwork. So we give them all the data. They all have iPads. They can put the classwork, participation levels, work ethic, homework, all the things go into the iPad. And then we give them the data dump, and they decide how they want to weight the different numbers to determine
So the interesting thing, both of your questions are interesting because you're asking questions about a customized competency-based math program that sits within a cohort school model, right?
Right.
So one of the design challenges is, how do you do this school-wide? How do you do what Mike Kerr has done in his K2 school-wide? So that's why I think,
instead of his classroom.
right. And so that's why, there's a lot that I appreciate about Joel, the idea of par value, the idea of customized playlists, but also his emphasis on sort of engineered learning experiences, learning pathways, really investing in better ways to learn, better ways for teachers to work together with kids. So we appreciate the work that you're doing. Join me in giving him a round of applause.
Thank you.
So all of our speakers will be available for a few minutes, and if you want even more, we're going to do this again at 4 o'clock. Thanks for being here.